Hi there, welcome to JezzaTime. I wonder what today's story's about. Barney Brown. Do you love trees? Well, Barney Brown absolutely adores them. He spends most of his time painting trees. Now, I don't mean actually painting the trees themselves, but what I mean is painting the bark of the trees. This is because Barney is a magical colour elf. Who are these creatures, I hear you ask? Well, they're secret to the world of humans, but their job is to repaint the colours of the world, working mainly at night to restore them to their glorious best. Barney belongs to the Brown family, and his task is to paint the various brown shades of colour of the trees. Sometimes the sun has faded them, or a naughty woodpecker has caused damage, pecking with its beak, or occasionally a squirrel has scratched the trunks. Barney doesn't mind. He loves his work, repairing the trees and repainting them the glorious brown colour. Thank goodness for Barney, because trees are very, very important. Do you know why they're so useful? Well, to start off with, they're just beautiful. And just like us, no two trees are exactly the same. They're all different in some way and all special. Yes, I know they're fun to climb too, but they also provide us with the oxygen we need and absorb much of the carbon dioxide in the air. Too much carbon dioxide can damage the ozone layer. You can find out about this yourself. Trees also provide homes or habitats for other creatures such as birds and insects, and they help us prevent the soil from being washed away when it rains. And they also provide much needed shade when the sun is shining warmly. So without healthy trees, the world would be in a very sorrowful state. Barney takes his painting very seriously. He has already been awarded his highly prized badge and certificate, and is extremely proud of the vital work that he does. Barney is what you might call a conscientious elf. Now, many of the elves like to work together, sometimes in a small group, sometimes in pairs. But Barney enjoys working on his own. I'm sure you've met people who prefer this way of working themselves, and you may even be like this yourself. And that is absolutely fine, because we're all different and sometimes prefer to perform certain tasks in our own way. However, there may be occasions when we do need to work together in a group, and in this story, Barney found this out for himself, as you will see. One summer's day, Barney was sent to one of his favourite woods to see if any of the trees needed repainting. Imagine his utter horror when he arrived there to discover that many of the beautiful trees had been damaged by the actions of humans. I cannot believe I'm writing this, but it's sadly true. Rubbish lay strewn everywhere, piled up amongst the trees. Such an ugly sight, totally spoiling the beauty of the magnificent woodland. But when Barney looked closer, an even more terrible sight met his eyes. Among the rubbish were huge broken containers. Poisonous liquid had seeped out from them and contaminated the earth. This had made the trees extremely sick, and their branches were drooping sadly, while their lovely, glossy brown colour had faded and become a dull, sickly grey. Humans had caused this by just dumping the rubbish and the toxic waste there and causing such damage and destruction. Some adults sadly do not know how to behave. Do you know what? I sometimes feel that if children were in charge of the world, it would be a much better place. Do you agree? Well, I'm sure that you all know how to properly dispose of rubbish anyway. Just dumping it in the woods is a dreadful thing to do. Barney was heartbroken when he came upon this awful sight, but nevertheless decided to try and do his best to repair the damage to the trees. So, taking out his magical brown paint and brushes, he set to work to try and restore the original brown colour. He heaved a big sigh. So many of the trees needed repainting. He'd only been working a short while when, to his surprise, he heard voices just behind him. Wonder if you can guess who it was. It was Roy Red and Geeta Green. You might like to hear their particular stories another time. They too were shocked at the devastation, and they asked Barney if they could help in any way. He thought this was extremely kind of them, especially as they had their own tasks to perform. However, as I've already said, Barney preferred working on his own. He thanked them and said he'd be okay. So Roy and Geeta departed and left Barney to himself. After a long day's work, Barney was concerned to see that he had painted only a tiny portion of the damaged trees, and he'd already used up a large quantity of the paint. He went to bed that night weary and worried. Would he have enough paint? The following day he continued to repaint the bark, and it was a lovely feeling to see the sick, dying trees making such a wonderful recovery and returning to life. But all the time, little doubts kept niggling away at Barney. What would happen if he ran out of paint? Once again, a little later, he was visited by some of the other elves. This time, Percy Purple and Yasmin Yellow appeared in the morning, while Bosky Blue and Oliver Orange visited in the afternoon. All four of the elves kindly offered their services to help him. But once again, Barney refused. He was determined to do the job himself. Besides, he thought, how could they help? Red, green, purple, yellow, orange and blue would be of no use. It was brown that was needed. At the end of the day, Barney looked round despondently. So many of the trees still needed to be repainted. And now he had only 2 small pots of paint left. Not nearly enough. He didn't know what to do and returned home, tired and disappointed, closer to tears than he'd ever been in his life. On seeing this, the other elves immediately went over to comfort him. They tried to convince Barney that he should allow them to help, and finally he agreed. He thanked them and went to bed that night in a much happier mood. Now I wonder if you can guess what happened the next day. Well, it was like magic in a way. The elves divided into pairs. Percy and Yasmin, Bosky with Oliver, and Roy partnering Geeta. Each elf brought forth its own special colour, and slowly and magically the 2 colours from each pair were mixed. So that's purple and yellow, blue with orange, and red with green. And guess what? They combined to form glorious shades of brown. You might like to try this yourself sometime. Barney beheld the beautiful brown colours in amazement. Now there would be enough paint left to save all the trees. All 7 elves worked tirelessly together in a group, and by the end of the day, The wood was restored to its natural beauty. What became of the rubbish? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that it was soon taken away and disposed of by a group of highly responsible humans. Barney thanked his friends. He felt so happy that the trees had all been saved. But he was also incredibly happy because he had learnt that sometimes so much more can be achieved in life through working in a group and as a team, cooperating together. We're lucky to live in such a wonderful world, but we need to take care of the environment. The elves can only repaint the colours. It's up to you and me and the rest of humanity to look after this wonderful world and preserve it for the next generation. I'm sure that if we all pull together, we will succeed. Thank you so much for listening to Story today. I hope you enjoyed it. Until we meet again next time though, it's bye from me, and remember, look after yourselves and your friends. So long.